3. What's wrong with this? Gotta close that picture here.
What?
Normally not that big.
Okay. Here, I think I can work on that. Let me get in here. See this here?
Oh,
Okay. You can slide it in like that if you want to.
okay. Got that light on. Let me some light here.
I didn't already turn the recording on.
I didn't.
I didn't either.
Tonight is case study 1. Will Bobby strike out? All right, share screen. Here we go. Okay. The directions were you were to read the case, but you were to read Chapter 6 in the School Discipline Principal's Quick Reference Guide. And you're asked what should the principal's course of action be. And be sure to address due process, substantive and procedural, standards of arbitrary and capricious, and also look at the 4 ethical paradigms. All right, so which group goes first?
Okay, I think that's me.
All right, Jennifer, do you have a button that says share?
I sure do.
If you'll click on that, we should be able to see your screen in just a minute. Let me stop my share.
It says you have to
Let me
stop.
my share. There you go.
All right, you see it?
Yes, we can.
All right, so this case study is for myself, Josh, Tashay, and Ashley. So when we got together, these are our initial thoughts. So before we even got hardcore into talking about the case study, we all kind of had our own thoughts that we just needed to get out, I think. So we said that was too harsh of a punishment. Punishment does not fit the crime.
What's that called?
I'm sorry?
What's the legal term for that?
Or
Too harsh a punishment?
the due process?
No,
Is that what you're talking about?
no. When you give too harsh a punishment, there's a legal term for that, and that was one of the 4 things you were to look at.
The arbitrary?
No, next one.
Could have been justice.
Capricious?
No, capricious.
Capricious? Yeah.
Capricious. Too much punishment is capricious.
Mhm.
Arbitrary is Jennifer and I both get caught smoking. They send Jennifer back to class and take me out back and shoot me. That would be arbitrary and capricious, since that's a little bit punishment, a little much for smoking.
Right.
So that's an example of arbitrary and capricious. In this case, you're exactly right. This case is all about capricious. It starts and ends with capricious. This is not really about due process. Kid admitted what he did.
Right.
This is about capricious, giving way too much punishment for the crime that the kid committed, the disciplinary infraction that he committed. So, all right, continue right on.
All right. So, so not enough information on the student's previous discipline issues with regards to cheating. So it didn't really tell us if this had been a problem in the past. Have similar consequences given to students in the past for the same crime.
That's arbitrary.
Are we allowing one bad decision affect the child's future?
That's your ethical paradigm.
And then further examine the consequences for such actions. So reviewing the policy.
That goes back to the principles. That goes back to 115C 288G, the rules, the duties and responsibilities of the principal. Who actually assigns grades in a public school?
Assigns grades?
Yeah.
The teacher.
No.
The principal.
There you
The
go.
data manager. So
Teachers
next
do
we
not assign grades. You got to understand that.
Mhm.
Teachers do not assign grades. Only principals assign grades, period. No exception, no argument.
So
I'm going to show
next-
you that in just a minute.
Okay. So what should the principal do? So first you have to obtain the information from both parties. Obtain needed admission of guilt from the student, which he did. examine consequences for similar actions by other students. So as this happened from another student, what did it look like? Examine school policy for wording such as may or will to determine if the administrator has the authority to determine consequences before taking the action. So that was where we looked at when he called the superintendent to get, I guess, clarification or advice. And then obtain central office advice moving forward and inform them of the said decision. So these are, I guess, some of the first steps that we all collaborated together that we said we would take. Substantive due process, further examine the school policy for correct wording with regards to cheating. Next, further examine similar cases for equal consequences and examine if the athlete is held to a higher standard unfairly as compared to their peers. So in the reading, when it was discussing how the uncle is a monetary contributor to the school, did the teacher's actions, are they reflecting because he's an athlete? Is there some kind of bias that the teacher may be having that she wants such harsh consequences taken? Or is it based off policy alone? So procedural due process, investigating and obtaining the admission of guilt. Ensuring that the student is aware of the policies, ensuring that the parent is contacted and made aware of the incident immediately, a written explanation of the charges, so the write-up to the student and the parent, and fair and impartial hearing of school admin and delivery of the school discipline would be steps that we would deal with for the process. Next, the justice, care, critique, and profession. So looking at the justice, just like we were talking about, the admin needs to be fair and equitable with regards to punishment. So just like you said, making sure that it is across the board the same for all students. Make sure that the principal is not abusing the power. Care maintains relationship with the community members while also leveling school discipline in an effort to teach the child. So also within the process, making sure that the child is aware that discipline also comes with consequences. Critique, examining the incident, the type of offense it is, and relaying to the teacher that the decision will be set by the principal. So the teacher was pretty demanding coming in, saying this is what's going to happen, this is the grade that the student was going to get, and reminding that the principal gives the grades, like you said. And profession, accountability for the student academic success, so the cheating part, transparency, ethical behavior being modeled in the school.
All right.
So our last thoughts of how we would handle the situation going forward. Josh said that the use of administrative authority to give the student a 0 on the assignment, but not for the class. In addition to completing the assignment, the student will also write a reflection to the teacher on the importance of not cheating. School punishment would be a 1-day at ISS. Ashley and I also added that complete the paper in addition to the above discipline, because obviously the paper is showing mastery for that content. Deshay also added that review of school policy on cheating in addition to making the child recomplete the assignment. So
All
that's
right.
where we were.
I like it. It's pretty good for the first time out.
Thank you.
Most everybody's first initial response. You can stop your share.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll share my screen. All right. Everybody's initial response usually in administrative programs is, I'm going to be that administrator that's different. I'm going to support teachers 100%. All the administrators forget what it's like to be in the trenches as soon as they go to the office, and I'm going to be their hero. You won't last till cold weather if you're that in this business. You have to follow the law first and foremost. Nobody can give you permission to follow to break the law. So let's talk about law. Let's go down the line here. First thing we need to look at is, what is the law? Who grades and classifies pupils? 115C, 288A. The principal has the authority to grade and classify as pupils. Period. End of story. Teachers do not give grades. Principals give grades. Principal is responsible for those grades, good, bad, or indifferent. All right, so understanding that, let's go back to the case study. Jane was planning to give Bobby a failing grade for cheating on the assignment. Since the project counted for more than half of his final grade, means he's going to fail for the year. In what universe can a class assignment count for more than half of a grade for a whole entire academic year? That's a violation of state policy on grading. The teacher just made that up because she was out to get Bobby. We understand that. Every district in North Carolina and South Carolina has a grading policy that they've adopted that mirrors that of the state. The final exam, the state final exam doesn't count more than 30%. How can one class project count more than half of your final grade? The teacher has not been consistent with the grading policy. She set her own in order to be arbitrary, but then she now is using it capriciously to give too much punishment. Principal, you better be paying attention to these kinds of things, because when I had to go out and visit principals whose teacher did dumb things like this, you think I ripped the teacher a new one? No. I came for the principal, because what's the law say? Who's responsible for this? The principal's responsible for this. That you weren't paying attention is immaterial. Tell me what you were doing that we weren't paying you for that kept you from doing what we were paying you for. And I'll help you with time management, or I'll help you to a new career. But you can't be this dumb as a principal to have a teacher that's going to count a class assignment as more than half of a yearly grade. You have to know things like these. Now, zero tolerance means we're going to give you the maximum punishment no matter what you did. So that's what's happening here. The maximum punishment is failing for the year on this. I mean, that's a maximum punishment. That's more than we allow for a kid that brings a weapon to school. And we got a kid that cheated on a class assignment, and we're going to deny him the right to go to school for a whole year. That's the same as excluding him for a year. So that would make that a zero tolerance policy, which is illegal. You've gone way over the limit. So let's look at the state classifies falsification of information as just simply unacceptable behavior. Code of conducts, and this is pretty much the same all over North and South Carolina, says that cheating is simply an honor code violation, and the most that you could do normally would be a tier 1, which is not even, which is a couple of days of in-school suspension, as you folks wrote down. The maximum that you would do would be out of school for 1 to 5 days, but that would have to be cheating on a state exam. On a class project, in-school suspension is the most that you can do. And this teacher is going to exclude this kid for an entire year under your authority, because who grades and classifies? That would be you as the principal. So this is a simple case of capricious. And these are the kinds of things that you're going to deal with is somebody makes we call him cheating. There's no, he's not denying it. He gets failed for the year. That's way too much punishment. But this is the kind of stuff that you're going to get into. Now, the thing about Bobby's uncle and the baseball, all that was just to distract you. The first thing you look at is what did he do and what was the punishment and was it appropriate? Arbitrary and capricious? No. His punishment was not commensurate with the crime that he committed. And so you got to know the law. But even in this case, anybody's common sense would tell you that we can't fail a kid for a year for cheating on a class project. That class project, if you got a 0 on it, shouldn't affect his grade more than 1 or 2 points for the entire year on a 100-point scale. So the teacher is completely in the wrong here. This is not really a case about cheating or arbitrary and capricious. This is about a staff member that's out of control. I'm quite sure this is not the first time with this staff member, or won't be the worst thing that she does probably this week. Obviously, this person is unhinged somewhat. This is completely unacceptable that we would try to treat a child this way in public school.
So can I ask if our approach was that a good approach of how we listed it?
It was a good approach. You looked at, you looked at, had he done this before? Instead of saying, what have we done to other kids before? You can't get into that now. What you need to look at is, what are your ranges? What does your code of conduct give you as a range of what you can do? Don't be comparing him to other kids now. That's a road you don't want to go down.
Okay.
You don't want to get started down that road, because then it gets into personalities. You look at what he did versus what the range is, and was this his first time? Was this his 4th time, 5th time? Now you got to be careful. You got to be careful about punishing kids for a collection of things. Now, if he's showing a pattern, you can bring if this is his 4th time that he's cheated. But if he was tardy one time, didn't take his lunch tray up one time, and was insubordinate one time, you can't count this as his 4th offense and give him a tier 2 or 3 punishment.
So if it's a high school student, and let's say he has a plagiarism 9th grade, one sophomore, and then his junior year he does it again, would you show that as a pattern up through the different years?
Pattern is 3.
Okay.
Pattern is 3 or more,
regardless of the length.
If a pattern is 3 or more in the level that they're in. So for his high school years, the 3rd time that he cheated or plagiarized, you could argue a pattern and give him more than the minimum punishment.
Okay.
Now, the exception to this is if he broke into school and he stole the state in the course exam in history and distributed it to everybody in the class. That's when it talks about right here. It talks about the superintendent may be able to take action against a kid at a tier 3 if it has a serious detrimental effect on other students and staff. That was put in specifically for kids breaking in and stealing state exams. So you can accelerate this thing first time up to a level 3 if the offense itself is serious enough. If they broke into school, committed to felony break and entering to get that exam, yeah, you could count that as a tier 3 then. The only way to move it off of a tier 1 is he needs to have 3 honor code violations in his high school year. 3 is a pattern, but it has to be the same thing. It can't be one's insubordination, one's tardies. You can't string a bunch of just random stuff together and try to give him more than the minimum. That's not allowable. Again, that's part of due process. You can't punish him for everything he's ever done, because he got punishments all along the way for those things. So you can't string a bunch of stuff together and then punish more than the minimum. But the caveat for that is if it's the same kind of thing, and this is his third offense of the same kind of thing, then you need to move off the minimum punishment, because obviously the minimum is not working. So you don't focus so much on what have you done to other kids. Focus on what your ranges are and what you're able to do, and focus on this kid and what he's done. You know, you can't be comparing kids. FERPA information, all privacy. Don't be comparing kids. You know, compare him to himself. Has he done this before? Not, you know, oh, he was tardy last week. Well, that's got nothing to do with him plagiarizing or you know, a test. It's got to be the same thing. That's the only time you can go past the minimum, is if it shows, if a pattern is shown. That's part of due process. That's part of the procedural due process rights. All right. Questions you have for me about this one? More questions? All right. Okay, who's very good. Who's next on the, I'm gonna stop my share. Which group's going next? All right, if you'll hit the share button. Myers Park High School. Anthony, are you at Myers Park? On Colony Road?
Yeah, we got a team camp right now, so I got
see.
Yeah, I got the coach down here to give me a chair, and I went to a back hallway.
Well, that was nice of you.
Yeah.
That was nice of them. Myers Park's a pretty good bunch of those. They're pretty good people over there.
Yeah, but then air conditioning in here right now. I'm about to start sweating.
You sound like my office at Gardner Webb.
I'm coming, y'all. Sorry. I'm getting the updated version.
It's all right.
All right.
I don't see the share.
If you'll just wave your mouse down toward the bottom of your screen, a little dash should pop up. There should be a little screen.
There, a little green icon. That's where mine was, and it says share at the bottom.
No, it's not. Yeah, I don't have that down at mine. At the bottom. Let me see.
You may have to move, if you've got a video, the pictures, you may have to just click and move them out of the way.
Okay.
Share button may be underneath them.
Okay.
That's usually what I do.
Okay. Let me see. Let me see. Oh, okay. All I see is, there it is. Got it. Okay. Can you guys see?
It'll take a second. There it comes.
Okay.
All right.
This is our case study 1, Zoom group 1. Becky, Blair, Roderick, David, and Toy. So we actually did ours just a tad bit different. We just kind of gave everybody their own opportunity to look at and address the two separate questions on their own, and then we came together as a group and had a group discussion about it, and we just kind of input our information into the PowerPoint. So Becky gave us the input that the principal needs to consider how this case will impact the future cases that are similar. This will set the precedence. While the principal needs to take into consideration all stakeholders, in this case, the student has clearly violated the student code of conduct, which he agreed to follow and observe. The teacher needs to be allowed to issue the appropriate consequences per the handbook for the county. The school will have a bad fallout if this were to make it to the media, similar to the college scandal cases. So we ended up kind of talking about just how easily and we allow things to kind of slip through the cracks. But I do want to say that we, after having some conversation, like you can tell at the end how we kind of went back and revisited some stuff. Blair,
Interrupt you just 1 second. I
yeah,
want to make sure that we're clear from the case. The school policy allowed the student to fail the assignment. The school policy did not allow that the student could fail for the year. Let's be clear on that part now. And that the teacher had manipulated the value of the assignment beyond what is allowable. That becomes the issue here. So the contention here that, you know, that the appropriate consequence, failing for the year is not the appropriate consequence. According to the handbook, the kid can only fail the assignment. He can't fail for the year. So let's be clear here that on that distinction is that you are not letting the kid off the hook for cheating. You're giving him the appropriate punishment for cheating. That's a point that needs to be highlighted. I'm sorry, go right ahead.
okay. The principal should allow the teacher to give the consequences for the actions delivered by the student. Failure to align consequences with the policies that have been outlined in the student handbook could lead to inequitable treatment if different students, past, present, or future, were given the consequences as outlined in the handbook for very similar situation. It appears that the principal finds his situation to be one that is difficult because of the financial impact it could have on the school and the political influence attached to the student. This case does lead to the need to revisit the case study, since the underlying issue with the policy is not the fact that the student will fail the assignment, but in fact that the one assignment can cause the failure of a class as a whole. But we do now realize that the political influence was just to throw us off. That's not the real issue here. We're aware of that now.
Good.
In this case study, the principal needs to investigate the situation to gain full knowledge of what the student is being accused of. The second step should be looking at the student's past history to see if there has been any consistent behavior for cheating. Once all of this information has been obtained, the principal should then finally refer back to the school handbook to maintain fairness and administer a consistent discipline action. In summary, the principal should allow the teacher to levy a punishment that is appropriate as defined by the handbook. While there are obvious circumstances which cloud the decision, allowing the student to escape consequences or pressuring the teacher to adjust their consequence would be detrimental to equitable treatment of all students and the inherent application of the handbook rules and consequences. The financial and social fallout that may ensue is unfortunate, yet a situation most leaders will have to face. While the teacher recommended punishment is capricious, punishment can be applied appropriately.
Very good.
And then lastly, the principal's course of action is important. In the reading, the consequences that the student is supposed to receive for cheating is unclear. Is this a failing grade for the assignment, which it should be, or is this for the overall course? The most important thing to remember is the best interest of the student. I believe that unfortunately this student may have to be made an example of. However, hopefully this will make the principal take a second look at the handbook. Based on the school system today, this is extremely harsh and wouldn't happen in my district. These are young people and they will make mistakes.
So is that yours, Toy?
Yes.
Excellent. I like your care and justice there on your ethic at the end. Excellent. Excellent. Young people make mistakes. And you've got to be compassionate. One of the things that I learned a long time ago, and I hope you all have as well, is that students that need love the most of the time deserve it the least. Students do things that they shouldn't do, but you can't discipline without compassion, and you can't allow. I mean, if you stay in the business long enough, you're gonna have a teacher like this. Hopefully, you'll only have one. I had mine. The very first administrative job I had mine like this, And he did gotchas on kids and did things like this all the time because he hated the kids that he had because they were all affluent kids. He taught the gifted kids, and he hated them. And he did things like this all the time. And you know, I finally just had to pull him aside and say, stop. You know, you're forever doing this. This is, you know, these kids deserve love too. I know they're a little snotty at times, but you can't continue to do this. And so I guess my perspective here is I want you to follow the law. I want you to know what the law is or go look. But I also want you to make sure that you maintain that care, that ethic of care and compassion and justice as well. That's important that you keep your humanity in this job. Excuse me, go right ahead.
Okay. Let's see. So each of us looked at the 4 ethical paradigms. It's important that the principal consider the multiple ethical paradigms: justice, care, critique, and profession, accountability for student, academic, and social success. Safeguard the values of democracy, equity, and diversity. Consider and evaluate the potential moral and legal consequences of decision-making. Best interests of the students, rights, responsibility, respect are the keys to making decisions that are in the student's best interest. And Becky did agree that there are always circumstances that could be handled differently, but in this case, it needs to be handled by the handbook guidelines. Blair, each of the 4 ethical paradigms are addressed in the case, are in the case presented. So justice, when deciding whether or not to alter or omit the policy as written in the student handbook. Care could be viewed as a breach of trust. However, all parties involved should come together to collaborate to make a decision that will be in the best interest of the student in future situation. For professionalism, although the situation presents a behavior that is not ethical, those who are making the decision must consider all components and how each one relates in reference to the outcome decided upon. Justice, the student was not being treated fairly and needing a full investigation of the incident. The administration team did not show much care to support the teacher based on the decision being made due to the uncle being a determining factor in this case. Critiquing with family member status to the school. In this case, it has instilled some corruption being displayed and unethical conduct with the administration team and profession. The school didn't show ethical behavior in this case due to the decision consequence being based on a non-school employee. The principal clearly finds himself in a situation where the student has exhibited a behavior deemed unacceptable. He also has a moral obligation to uphold the rules and procedures approved by all stakeholders, but within reason, according to the Code of Conduct. While individual circumstances must be considered, the best interest of the students may be best served by adhering to the handbook and allowing the classroom teacher to levy an appropriate consequence. Issues with the handbook language must be addressed separately, and as a result of this incident, not alongside it. There is no equity in the punishment related to grades relative to the yearly grade. And then lastly, I said the first paradigm, justice. In this case, I don't truly feel that fairness is being exhibited. Care and concern for the future of the student is not being taken into consideration. Critique needs to be addressed here also. Will the decision be based on the best interest of the child or the best monetary interest? And then profession is a tough one to address because the student clearly violated the rule and signed the papers to be held responsible. The principal does have an obligation to model ethical behavior. And just in conclusion, the student should be reprimanded, but within the guidelines of the Code of Conduct. The teacher inferred punishment is out of line and inconsistent with grading rules and Code of Conduct tiers. The principal has an obligation to assign grades fairly and within the Code of Conduct, and punishment should be commiserate and applied with respect to only this incident or repeat offenses of a similar incident.
Excellent. Excellent. It's almost like you heard my speech. You got it right. Applied with only this incident or repeat of the same thing. You can't bring in everything he's ever done, and it's got to be assigned fairly within the Code of Conduct. In-school suspension's the most you can give. Nowhere does it say you can exclude a kid for a year. for cheating on a class assignment. Grading rules. This teacher's not being consistent with grading rules. Nowhere is it allowable for a class assignment to count over a half of a yearly grade. I think yearly grades, I think class assignments can only count 10% in North and South Carolina. I think that's the maximum. Most places they only count 1%. Again, don't be thrown off by the particulars. That was just thrown in there about the uncle and the other things to throw you off. But this one, very good. Very good. I feel really good that you got this one. Excellent. All right, who's next? If you'll stop your share and take us back to the main screen, we'll get our last presentation. Excellent. Who's going now?
It's us.
All right, Anthony. You should have a, there you go, look at Anthony.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, so I hope we did this right. All right, so when we were addressing our questions, I think we had a lot of debate in our group, which I don't think was a bad thing, but what we came up with was the principal should conduct their own investigation first. The principal should want to be fully informed, and that means using both sides and your own interpretation. I feel like the teacher should, well, we felt like the teacher should support, the principal should support the teacher's decision, but we'll get into more on that on the next slide. I said the principal needs to speak with the parents regarding the teacher's decision without the teacher in the room, just to show of support, saying like what you said was final. And the principal needs to oversee the rewording of the student handbook. According to the cheating policies, it says the word may makes the policy ambiguous. And it wasn't until you said something a little while ago that I noticed that they didn't really, I had to go back and look at it, but they didn't really specify whether it should fail that assignment or the class. And I think that's a lot of where our debate came in. And so our discrepancy we had was that we said the team was split in how they viewed the principal's process should be. I believe the word may left it open for the consequences to be ambiguous for interpretation. So he believed that the principal should have a conversation with the teacher first to see for alternative options. I personally felt like what was being said earlier was that there was kind of an attack. The kid in the case study, it said that the kid was remorseful. So I don't feel like kicking a person while they're down is the appropriate thing anyway. I think like it would minimize backlash on the teacher, administration, and the school. And I further said that because if you left that interpretation open in a handbook, maybe I'll build my class off of straight relationships and I would never go about it that strict, but maybe somebody else does management and they will go as strict as possible. Now you have somebody saying, well, Mr. Parks does this, but then Ms. Hawkins does this. And then there's no, it's just areas of gray, it's not black and white. Ms. Hawkins believed that the rule should be the rule and the conversation should just be with the principal and the parents of the student who cheated. The student needs to go to summer school, and the student in the case study should recognize that they did sign an acknowledgement form that protects the teacher. In both cases, I felt like we were right. I felt like she had a point where as far as wording was, and I felt like I had a point in where I just felt like if it was one of her straight A students, that she just wouldn't have done that. I don't see how, if a kid has an A all year in your class and they go to tutoring and you have a great relationship with the parents are always checking in, attendance is always good, and then they just make a mistake. Maybe they didn't get enough sleep the night before and they just make a mistake and look over at somebody's paper. I don't think you would knock your straight A student that much. So we went big on saying the rewording of the whole handbook in that policy needed to be changed. Addressing the 4 ethical paradigms as they relate or not to this case. These can be found in the document role of the principal above and in the materials in the main folder. So we got justice. I said fairness, equity, and justice, assessing and addressing consistency with the policy and its wording. I just feel like the policy wasn't worded well, and the teacher took full advantage of it, and that just wasn't right. She did have reasonable suspicion, probably because she had suspicion because she had given an assignment before, something else was turned in just like it. And the kid admitted to it. So I think just because the kid admitted to it, you want to give a consequence, but you don't always want to go maximize something on someone because they were honest. We always say honesty is the best policy. You got to give us a reason to keep being honest, especially kids. So then we had care, loyalty, and trust. The principal must obtain loyalty from his employees by supporting their decision fully. Concern and connection was what are the potential positive and negative consequences of the student being sent to summer school. One of the positives is that, okay, maybe he learns from his mistake, but the negatives weigh so much more. Like the other group said, now we know that the uncle was a distractor, but at the same time, this does have potential backlash to get into news or somewhere where you don't want it. So you just want to avoid that if possible. And I felt like with the wording, me reading the wording this time, I felt like this should be one of those where we're going to play it by this case. We're going to go back to the wording on the handbook. And then from this point on, it's going to be this going forward. Relationships, collaboration, shared decision-making, and connections. The principal must have a team collaborate on how to make this policy less ambiguous. Critique. We talked about corrupted morals. The student in question may exhibit this behavior on a regular basis or just made a simple mistake. Either way, the behavior must be addressed with a suitable consequence. Power. The principal doesn't have to adjust giving the student a consequence because the uncle is on the school board and the Chamber of Commerce, but the principal should make sure that the punishment makes sense for the crime and the proper protocols followed. We said profession, accountability for student academic and social success. This is a lesson about consequences and that the student should be upheld to certain morals and values. And model principles, self-awareness, reflective practice, transparency, and ethical behavior. The punishment just has to fit the crime. It just did not. I felt it didn't fit, but at the same time, I'm okay with us not agreeing on the case study the whole way because it just, as we sat down for a long time, we just came up with the conclusion that it's just how we are interpreting it. And if we're interpreting it this way, if I'm interpreting it my way, then somebody else is interpreting it my way. But if Ms. Hawkins is interpreting it this way, then somebody else is. And Ms. Wells essentially said, I just don't know whose side to take because both of you have great points. So, and that's where we were with our case study. I don't think we really came to a conclusion of what should happen as far as the biggest thing that we agreed on was the wording.
Okay. Can you back up a slide?
To the critique.
Go one more back. All right. The principal must obtain loyalty from his employees by supporting their decisions fully.
Yes. And I'll say that was mine at first because I wasn't looking at the bigger picture of the teacher not being fair. I mean, I guess I was, but it really wasn't me saying the teacher wasn't being fair. I was just finding inconsistency with the wording. Had I looked at it how you said it at first, then I would have reworded it to fit more of what you were addressing.
Well, let's just take that sentence by itself, outside of the case study at all. Let's examine that sentence.
Okay.
Just accept all of us. Let's look at that. The principal must obtain loyalty from his employees by supporting their decisions fully. Is that a good idea?
Absolutely not.
So if you will if you will stop your share,
Okay.
I'm going to work us through something here. Let me see if I can do a share. All right. All right, so this is duties and responsibilities of the principal. Nowhere in there does it say that you have the responsibility to support teachers fully. It's a good idea to support your teachers, but that can't be your number one objective in the role of an administrator. You want to support your teachers, but that is not part of the job. That is not part of the legal duty and responsibility. Your number one responsibility is to students, not to the employees, always. You have to, I know that's kind of splitting hairs, but it makes a big difference in how if you're always there for students, the employees will respect you. But if you're only there for the people who work there, I'm afraid you won't make good decisions. I mean, I'm talking proverbially. I'm not talking about Anthony now.
No, I understand.
And so that's one of the things we talk about early on in your quest to become a school administrator. You have to change your lens. You have to change your lens from that of a teacher to that of an administrator. And you have to see things from a different perspective. Teachers want to be supported all the time, fully. And again, I said, we have this romantic notion that when I get my shot, I'll remember where I came from, and I'll always support teachers. That's a wonderful notion. It just can't be done all the time. And if it comes down to a choice between teachers and students, they pay you to make the choices for students. Unfortunately, for teachers sometimes, and teachers don't understand that or don't agree with that. That's unfortunate, but that's the nature of the business. You have to support students first. And so let's go back one more thing before we get done. Let's go back to the case study. As part of the school's policy to maintain standards of cheating of any kind may require a failing grade by the teacher. Now, that failing grade is not for the year, because who assigns, the teacher assigns class grades. Who assigns final grades for the year? That would be the principal. So if you read, and if we understand duties and responsibilities of the principal, we understand what that means is the teacher may fail the kid for a class assignment, but the teacher can't fail the kid for the year. Who's the only person that can fail a kid for the year? According to state law, who's the only person who could fail a kid for a year?
Principal.
That is correct. That's the only person who can do that. The final grades are assigned by the principal. So what that means is that school's handbook says that the teacher can assign a failing grade for that class assignment, but the teacher cannot assign a failing grade for a year. But what should have made your radar go off is since the project counted for more than half of his final grade, the teacher just made that up. We have the principal has a guideline that they have to go by in terms of how final grades are assigned. State exams count 30%, class exams count 30%, quarterly tests, those, it's broken down as to how you assign the final grade. We allow teachers to do that calculation, but that doesn't absolve us from the responsibility if they get it wrong. So again, this is one of those where you can't support this teacher because this teacher arbitrarily decided that her class assignment was going to count more than half of the yearly grade. Who determines the yearly grade? That would be the principal, not the teacher. And the teacher has to follow the grading policy of the district that's been adopted by the Board of Education per the state law on grading and classifying students. So the teacher just kind of departed here and just went off on her own and said, I'm going to fail this kid for the year based on this one class assignment. Not legal at all. If you know the law, that should have been your first clue. Wait a minute, this is not legal at all. So there's not really that. This one's not hard if you understand the law. Who assigns the final grade, and that final grade is based on the Board of Education adopted grading policy as set out by the state of North or South Carolina. You understand the teacher had no authority to do this whatsoever. A failing grade on this shouldn't have counted for more than a point or two in the yearly grade on a 100-point scale. So that should have been the focus. Is this teacher has basically assumed way more authority than she has and given way more punishment than the law allows.
So, Dr. Lynn, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
What is your feeling on attendance recovery in a student failing? Because I've now found out that it is not really a 10-day thing in CMS. It is, some schools do 15. Some schools do 18, just depends on what they deal with as far as chronic absenteeism. So I know I was helping one of the kids out. He ended up missing 30 days in a class. He passed that teacher's test. She gave him a 59 for the year because he had missed 30 days. He didn't do the recovery packet, but he showed enough to pass. And now that you're saying this, there really is no, I don't know that it's set. There's a set amount of days that's missed.
There isn't.
So and he tried to talk to her. He ended up doing the packet. He half did it, and then he came back and fully did it and turned it in. And now she still won't turn it in. What should he do about that thing? Because now he's worrying about dropping out of school and doing some.
He just needs to file a grade appeal.
He needs to file a what?
A grade appeal. You can always file a grade appeal.
Okay. Even if the school year is over?
Even if the school year is over, you still file a grade appeal. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You can file a grade appeal.
I was just wondering, I told him where he was wrong and everything. And,
oh, yeah.
But at the same time, it's just like, you got a kid on the edge right now. He's a good soccer player, but he is thinking about, he's already 16 and a freshman. So he's thinking about dropping out of school. But if he passes his class, he's already eligible. But the class giving him an F made him ineligible when he passed every part of the class.
He needs to file a grade appeal and make the principal make the decision. And hopefully the principal will look at this. I mean, I'd hate to take that one to court. I certainly would hate to take that one to court because you'll lose in court on that one. If it gets to court, you'll lose on that one.
Well, where do you file a grade appeal at? Just your school? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can file a grade appeal with the principal at the school.
Okay.
But I've been on the other end of those years ago. I can tell you what happens when you go to court. You'll lose that one. Because there is no hard and fast rule that if you miss this many days, you fail automatically, and that's basically what's happened. That would be a zero tolerance again. If he can pass the work,
then he should be good to go.
I mean, that's one of those that that we kind of have a administrative policy versus board policy. Board policy in CMS is not that kid fails. That's kind of an administrative policy kind of thing. And I can tell you what happens if it goes to court. You'll lose that one. The kid will win that case.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just get that information to him.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those that courts have been very consistent on. That if a kid passes the work, and you don't have a hard and fast rule on the number of days, and the kid makes up the work and passes the test, No, you're not going to fail that kid. Might not want to pass the kid, but that's not, this is not a case of want to.
Yeah.
That one's pretty clear. That precedent's been established.
Okay.
I'd sure hate to go in front of former Judge Trosh with that one. He'd make you stand up out in the gallery and just undress you, just take all your hide off. You did something that dumb.
Well, I appreciate your help on that.
So yeah, that one, kid can file a grade appeal, and it should be granted. Hopefully somebody will come to their senses on that case. And these are the kinds of things that you have to deal with on a regular basis. The main thing is I don't expect you to memorize all 545 general statutes, but you better know that code of conduct. You better know that state manual on discipline. You better know to ask and look. But again, you've got to develop this kind of a sixth sense of when you know something's just not right. I mean, even if you're not a professional educator, you've got to know that failing a kid for the whole year over cheating on a class assignment sounds awfully harsh, even if you're not a professional educator. I mean, what's the purpose here? We're trying to facilitate kids, and we're trying to do the right thing, and we're trying to get them to grow and learn, and we're here for them. We're not here for the adults in the building. I want to do the right thing for them. I want them to enjoy coming to work every day, but it goes back to, and this is kind of the benediction here. You probably hear just as I am playing in the background here. This is kind of the benediction. Frederick Hertzberg is the father of all modern motivational theory in terms of work. In Hertzberg, he called them motivators and hygienes. We now call them satisfiers and dissatisfiers. That people stay in their jobs and are good or work hard or do a good job based on satisfiers and dissatisfiers. And one of the things that you have to learn early on is, as a school administrator, you cannot be a satisfier. By the definition of Hertzberg, people find satisfaction in the actual work itself. For a teacher, that's teaching kids, being in class. That's where they have to derive their satisfaction. Now, you can be a dissatisfier as an administrator if you're unreasonable and overbearing and those kinds of things. But your job can't be to try to be the satisfier for teachers. They have to find their satisfaction and motivation through teaching, working with kids. That's the job. And you can't overcome their dislike of kids or dislike of teaching and working with kids by any artificial means. No amount of giving them gear or shirts or buying them Price's Chicken Coop on Friday will overcome them not liking kids. And if you have people who don't like kids, they don't need to be in this business. I mean, I don't know what this lady had against Bobby or Bobby's family, but obviously there's a problem here. And the problem is the teacher in this case. And you're going to run into some like this in your career if you're in it long enough. As I said, my very first job, I had one like this. He just hated the kids. He absolutely hated them. He took every opportunity to try to do gotchas with kids. This is the kind of thing that David would have done. I mean, when I read this case, when I was looking for this case study, I read this, I thought that we should have called this teacher David, because this is exactly what he would have done. He would have just invented some grading scale that made this a major incident rather than the relatively minor incident that it was. He's the very kind of teacher who would have said, well, that counted 80% of the grade. That's exactly what he would have done, and just pulled it out of thin air, just to persecute this kid. Obviously, this teacher is persecuting this kid. I mean, this punishment is so over the top that you can't arrive at any other conclusion that this teacher is just persecuting this kid, whether it's the kid himself or whether it's his family or what it is. This teacher has just, I mean, she basically has shot this kid over a minor infraction. And you're going to run into things like this, and you got to remember, your job is not to make everybody happy. Your job is A, to follow the law, and B, to do the right thing for kids. That's the legal and the ethical part of it. Is do the right thing law-wise and do the right thing for kids. Sometimes that's not what makes teachers happy, but your job is not to make them happy. In cases like this, you just can't. I hate it, but this is a good lesson to start out with in case studies. I picked these 4 case studies based on the legal seminar that happens every 3 years in Raleigh. It's a 3-day event. I go every 3 years. I do the updates in between. And these are the legal issues, the hot button issues that are most relevant right now. And I wanted to bring this one in. This one's not about cheating. It's not about due process. This is about making sure that the punishment fits the crime. We in our society, we have kind of lost our compassion. We're having some problems with that nationally right now. But we need to remember what public school is for. It's to give kids an opportunity to rise above their circumstance. And we have to have compassion for students. I know that's not fashionable right now on the political landscape. We yell and scream and holler at one another, and we try to reward our friends and punish our enemies. But that's not how we should conduct ourselves in public school. We need to make sure that we follow the law and that we're compassionate and ethical in the things that we do. I appreciate your time tonight. You did a great job. I don't know when Dr. Talent will be back with us. The memorial service for her husband was yesterday. I called her today, but I did not get her. But we will continue on. So next Monday night at 7 o'clock, you'll have your regular class again. I or one of Dr. Talent or Dr. Picker or somebody will be in charge. But continue on with your work. I'm grading your work. I've got several items that came in from the time I left this afternoon. I'll grade what you put in this evening. I'll grade it as soon as we come offline tonight. Dr. Pickard, you've got the recording. Are you going to upload it to YouTube?
Yes,
and,
sir. I sure will.
All right, if you'll do that, make sure everybody's got it. But you'll be back online next Monday at 7. I'll continue to grade your work until further notice. Y'all are doing really good work too, by the way. I appreciate that. You're doing good things. I hope that you're learning a lot through your activities, going and asking folks things. We want to get you in the habit of going and asking if you don't know. And I like what you're doing. I like the videos that some of you are doing. I like those as well. When you're interviewing folks, I've really enjoyed watching the videos as well. You're doing a great job, and I appreciate it. So thank you again. I'll see you next time.
Dr.
Hey, I
Larry,
have a question.
Yes.
Does everybody in the group need to upload the PowerPoints to their?
Yes, you need to get your points for it. Make sure you upload the group PowerPoint for yourself and upload your personal reflection so you get your points. Is there any way we can get some information to send cards and condolences? Excuse me. I will send her home address when we get through with class tonight. I have obtained that for you, and I will send you that email. Everybody have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you.